Thank you, Sangameshwar. Can we have the next Hariharan? Mr. Hariharan, could you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Good evening all. So I'm Hariharan and I'm the AVP at Maverick Systems, Chennai. And my primary responsibility is more towards, the digital transformation. And also, we are marching towards our 4.0, wherein quite a lot of IT enablement and employee engagement activities that we are looking at. With regards to IT, quite a focus is on IT security, and then the other aspects for better workplace environment for the employees. So I manage that space. So,
thank you so much, Hari. May I ask Mr. Yatish Prasad to please introduce himself?
Thank you, Giri. Hi everyone, good afternoon. This is Yatish Prasad. I head the IT team for the group functions within Society General Global Solution Center, and I cover the regions of India and Romania. Very important topic today to be discussed, and hence I'm here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you, Yatish. May I ask Mr. Jolie Pyranikal to please introduce himself?
Yeah, good afternoon all. I'm Joji. I head legal, internal control and information security for Geojit Financial Services Limited. I'm based out of Cochin, and I look forward to hear from all of you and learn these topics. It's very important and relevant these days. So over to you, Giridhar.
Thank you, Joji. Can I ask Mr. Sarveshwar Rao to please introduce himself?
Good afternoon. This is Sarveshwar Rao from Hyundai Mobis India. I look for the topic which is interesting, and I head the IT team in India for the Hyundai Mobis plants.
Great to have you here today, Mr. Rao. And may I ask Mr. Mohammad Rahman to introduce himself?
Hi, Mohammad Rahman. I'm heading Gati and All Cargo. Okay, the logistics point of view, IT. Basically, the on-premise data centers and cloud services, I'm just taking care, including the security compliance perspective, the implementation part. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. So thank you everyone for those quick introductions. So I think we have a very knowledgeable group of practitioners and IT and security experts here today. So I look forward to a very interesting and engaging discussion around the topic. So let me quickly introduce the topics. Over the last 12 to 18 months, all of us know that the organizations have been making a lot of changes to the way they are deploying, operating, and managing enterprise IT systems. The main reason being that users are now everywhere, and they're also using a wide variety of devices to access the corporate applications. And we are also seeing an increasing volumes of data and applications being put on the cloud, and the growing use of new technologies like containers and serverless compute models. So we are saying changes in the infrastructure, we are seeing changes in the way the applications are being deployed, we are seeing changes in the way users are accessing all these resources. And the consequence of all this dramatic shift in the usage and deployment of IT is that the enterprise perimeter has vanished. And the challenge of therefore protecting the enterprise assets, IT assets particularly, has increased significantly. And traditional security technologies or techniques that we were using, which often focus on protecting the network perimeter, are no longer adequate. I think we can all agree on that the situation has changed so much. But the challenge is still there, how to remain secure and resilient, and so do we need to rethink our security strategies? Do we need to think about new paradigms like zero trust? So our discussion today will explore the limitations of current security approaches and what can be done to enhance the threat response, reduce operational complexity. I think that's a big need, while retaining the business agility and flexibility. I think that is a given that we need to do that. We can't put in new hindrances to the way to doing businesses if we want more, even though we want more security. So to kick off the discussion, I would like to invite R. Narayanan. He's a networking and security expert from VMware, and to share his perspective on the current state of cybersecurity and the new approaches that are being adopted to enhance, security and business alliance. To quickly introduce Narayanan, he's a networking and security sales specialist with VMware. He has over 20 years of experience, and he has previously worked with, well-known organizations like Symantec, Juniper, SoftCell, and NNN Systems. So over to you, Narayanan.
Thank you so much, Giridhar, for the introduction, and I hope everybody can hear me clear. Thank you so much. So, and I hope everybody can see my slides as well.
Yes,
right.
We can see
sure.
That.
I think it's no surprise that whatever Giridhar mentioned is exactly what you're going to see in the first 2-3 slides. That's pretty much what I had put it in as an image, because I think that's pretty much what our problem has been, right? So I think my introduction is already done, so not spending any time there. So, but I think basically if you look at from a traditional network perspective, so all our applications have been in the data center, within the 4 walls of the beautiful data center, which we used to protect with multiple layers of security. Over the period of time, the layers of security has only gone ahead and increased. Like, it's not one layer. We will have multiple firewalls. We'll have DLP, email security, web security. So it's just gone ahead and increased, right? And that's been the approach. So if the data center is protected, your network is protected, everything is well and good, right? And so what has happened, in the last decade or so, the applications are no longer residing just within the data center, right? So applications, of course, they moved into VMs a decade and a half back. But then there is also the birth of containers. Applications are no longer monolithic. It is getting, more and more it is microservices, because everybody wants to come out with the applications as fast as possible to support the business. And so we are talking about not only managing our bare metal environment, but also managing our VM, but also managing the new microservices and all the container environment, which might itself run on multiple open source technologies, right? So it's completely outburst of application evolution, we can say. And not only do we just restrict with the applications evolution, right? From the infrastructure also to support those applications have evolved over the period of time. Today, we have the users, the home users. I'm working from home. I'm sure most of you are still working from home. Then, we connect from the airport or anywhere. We connect from the branch. We are still connecting to the data center to access our workloads. Similarly, the same set of people are still connecting to the cloud environment, because the workloads are more and more getting deployed in cloud. And when we talk about cloud, it is also not about one single cloud today, because nobody wants to get locked to one particular cloud vendor. Definitely, there are some organizations who have done that in the past, and they've seen that the cost efficiency will go for a toss if they're just locked with one cloud vendor. So essentially, the efficiency is about having your workloads across multiple cloud. And then the best part is you have your data or applications at the edge also, right? So typically, if you see, the applications have evolved, multifold. The infrastructure has evolved. As Giridhar just mentioned, there is no perimeter that you need to just put a fence around and you say, okay, you're protected anymore, right? So the perimeter has completely dissolved. Now, while organizations have seen the digital transformation benefits of accepting the modern applications, multi-cloud environment and all that, what has that it's really exposed themselves to, right? It has really exposed themselves to the multiple vulnerabilities that they have to go ahead and protect right now. So it's not just your internal applications vulnerability, right? It could be your Kubernetes vulnerabilities. It could be some applications, that you kind of, looking to adopt from, Kubernetes or containers, that could be vulnerable and then you could be breached. It could be a configuration issue in your multi-cloud environment, right? One configuration issue, one small human error that could allow an attacker to get into your network. It could be a phishing attack, right? Somebody could steal my own credentials and he can log into VMware as Narayanan, right? So that is also possible. Now, from a hacker's perspective, if you see, the attack surface has tremendously increased. It's not just the four walls of the data center that he needs to worry about penetrating into and getting into, right? So he is like, he's got a complete open field right now, and he basically hunts for vulnerabilities and just get into your network. So from the data center to protecting and defending against millions of vulnerabilities, right? I know of several organizations who have, at least at any given point of time, they have more than million vulnerabilities in the network which they are aware of. They cannot fix each and everything. They have to live with it. They need to prioritize and accordingly make sure that they are still defended and it is foolproof protection. So while the organization needs to protect themselves against millions of vulnerabilities that might exist in the network, for the attacker, it is just one vulnerability that he needs to break into the network, right? So this is the kind of state that we are all living in. It is very, very fragile, but that's the reality. So can we compromise on transformation? No. Can we look at security? We have to definitely evolve the security and look at the real-time views of how the situation has evolved and accordingly put in the security, right? So earlier days, whosoever comes into data center is trusted, whosoever from the external world is not trusted, and that's how it used to be. But today, it is about giving any user, all the users, access to all the applications, irrespective of from which devices they are logging in, irrespective of from which cloud they want to access the workloads in, right? So from the security perspective, you need to basically bucket it into multiple segments, which could be your endpoints, which could be the identity of the users, which could be the workloads, and which could be the cloud workloads as well, right? And network, of course, plays an important part there. So each of these areas has to be specifically monitored, and every single control point is really unique in itself for us to be like really focusing on to have a complete end-to-end zero trust security model. So today, obviously, we know we cannot touch on each and every point, because I'm sure everybody will agree that's it's quite extensive by itself. We will pick on the most complex one that the organizations have really suffered a lot, and that is basically the network. So the network security is, a lot of organizations believe that is of the paramount point where they need to focus on enabling the security mechanism against this kind of attacks that we see on a daily basis. Now, when we talk about network security, right, I just kind of take a step back here and wanted to, many of you would have seen this earlier, but just wanted to highlight this. This is the Mitre attack framework, right? In this Mitre attack framework, basically it's an industry framework. It's not something that VMware collated or VMware made this framework. It's something that most of the security vendors in the industry typically follow. And if you see here, the first three tactics, these are all the tricks and tactics that Mitre has clearly documented in the framework. If you see the first three, which is the initial access, or trying to execute an attack and trying to be persistent, these are the things which typically the multi-layer security that we spoke about, right? The perimeter defenses. These are the things that typically they will take care of. Everything security based on IP ports and everything that the firewall or NGFW will typically take care. Once they are inside your network, then it's all about how are they being able to escalate using the privileges that they have. Then they look at how they can evade the defenses against all the security controls that you might have in a network, trying to gather credential access, trying to discover more using the renaissance, looking for more vulnerabilities into your network, moving across your network without even being caught, collecting all the critical information, and connecting with the command and control center, and then exfiltrating the data outside, right, before doing that final impact. So if you see, I mean, this is pretty broad, interesting topic. Each one, is again quite extensive that Mitre has documented. If you see most of these areas, right, which is in the dark blue, this is the active, east-west. This is the active attack which is happening in the east-west segment, right? Most of the perimeter defenses today protect us against the north-south traffic, basically, which is traditionally about 15 to 20% of your overall traffic. But typically, if you see for most of the organizations, the east-west traffic is about 75 to 85%, and that is where most of the attacks today gets, initiated. So this is the Mitre attack framework. And typically, as the framework was mentioning about right here, we just look at, what the attacker does. He basically gets into a network, and that's the same thing as what I explained to you from a Mitre attack framework perspective, right? So he goes all around the place, looking for the information they want to steal, looking for the information where they can make the maximum impact, right? So that's what these guys go about doing. Now, if you again look at from the attacker's perspective, either he needs to write very lengthy codes to penetrate into your network, or he just needs to wait and watch and consistently discover for vulnerabilities in your network and break in, right? So today, the current situation is it is really, really very easy for the attacker to break in because he doesn't need to write any codes. He doesn't need to be a software developer. He doesn't, it's very, very easy for him. He just needs to do the reconnaissance of a network. He just needs to find out the vulnerabilities, and he can just, attack with the weakest link that we have, right? So we all have heard about Log4j vulnerability with the Java services. We all have heard about the vulnerabilities in SolarWinds applications. So vulnerabilities could be anywhere, and it's just one vulnerability, as I said, that the attacker would need to break into your network. Now, what do we do from a VMware perspective, right? So, these attacks are going to be there. Ransomware is something that, it's available as a service today. So, that is a kind of transformation the attackers have also evolved the last couple of years. So we need to definitely mitigate against this kind of, threats. And what we have done foundationally different is providing you capabilities of all the security aspects that you would typically aspire to keep it at the perimeter. We are bringing it closer to the workloads itself. We are bringing it closer to the applications itself. So that is something that VMware is doing very, very consciously. So it all basically started with a software-defined networking. And as you all know, VMware has been a pioneer in the software-defined segment, so starting from compute virtualizations to storage virtualization to network virtualization. So what you've done is you have taken one step ahead, beyond the network virtualization, and we are talking about providing all the security capabilities also in a software-defined framework, thereby giving you the efficiency and high level of security that you would kind of demand from the current threats perspective. So what we do, we basically provide your firewall capabilities. We break the firewall into smaller chunks, and we provide the distributed firewall capabilities for all of your workloads, right? So the users, or there is no hairpinning that is required from one VM to another VM. There is no hairpinning that is required multiple hops to do any kind of security checks. Even if there are two VMs in the same VLAN, they don't need to go all the way across multiple hops to get all the security checks done, because what we've done is we are bringing all the security capabilities, whether they can access, not access, anything that is required to do with that particular VM security is all created right closest to the host itself. Now, we don't stop there at all, right? We go one step beyond, and we provide the similar distributed IDS and IPS capabilities at every single host, right? So which means we can again bring all of these IDS IPS capabilities for every single host that you have in your network. We can do similarly load balancing. We can do web application firewall capabilities. So all of these functionalities that you typically require from a security perspective, from a monitoring perspective, it's all being distributed for every single host, bringing them closer to the application itself, right? Now, because we are closer to the application, we will also know the application context, or we will be more application aware. So that way we can help you improve the cybersecurity posture even much better. And again, the most important area that I would say is the analytics part, right? So we don't tap on every traffic, create a separate data lake to provide you the analytics that you would require to make decisions, right? We basically provide inline analytics, right? So which means there is no separate data lake that is created. We basically provide inline analytics to tell you across the hop what is exactly happening in your network. So you have the clear visibility. If there is a breach, what is the pattern? How you can mitigate that breach. Everything is clearly communicated to you because of the analytics, in-depth analytics that we can provide. right? So that's something that VMware provides as a solution, as a platform. Now, how do we do that, right? So this is a slide that we will possibly, I'll just try to explain, because again, as I said, it's quite extensive all by itself. But we do that by following these 3 steps. The first and foremost step is we cut the network into as smaller pieces you would want. You want to have a separate web server pool. You want to have a separate application server pool. Everything can be cut into as smaller pieces as much you want, and then you can apply the distributed firewall capabilities for each of the applications or for each of the workloads, right? So we can really go granular to a particular VM. So imagine you are having thousands of VMs, and imagine you are having firewalls for each of those VMs, right? And it's all managed from one single console. It's a distributed firewall. It's not a discrete firewall. It's one single console through which you basically manage all of the firewall policies. So for you to scale up the firewall policies, it's very, very simple, easy, and efficient. Now, the first is, as I said, to put the distributed firewall capability in each of those required workloads. The second is, today the malwares are also very, very intelligent, right? So a file share protocol 445 SMB port, and that was basically breached for your WannaCry ransomware, right? So essentially that's where we are talking about, what if somebody is not riding on a stolen credentials, right? That's what the step 2 is all about, where because our IDS IPS is closer to the host, closer to the application, we know what the application context is, we know what the application topology or behavior is. So we know what is right, what is wrong. So I know this is a SQL, this is MySQL, this is Tomcat, this is Apache. So basically apply the security policies based on that. And whatever that is malicious, we can immediately detect, hey, this seems to be a malicious traffic and this can be blocked. So anything that looks like a legitimate, as I spoke about the 445 file server protocol SMB port, right? So we can clearly identify if it is malicious or not, right? So that's the kind of signature-based IDS IPS that we provide at individual host level to improve the overall cybersecurity posture. Now, going one step beyond, right? Step 2 is all about per hop, right? Between a file server and between an application server. So what we do with step 3 is to give you the complete context across the hops, right? So if we know there is a breach, and you might know that, okay, the attacker might be there in your network for the last, three days or 30 days or 300 days. How do you even know about it, right? You need to have some analysis based on which you can identify, hey, okay, this is how this attacker entered the network. This is the VM that he accessed. This is the application that he accessed. These are the different services he accessed. And this is what the context looks like, right? So you basically get a, we don't kind of throw, say, 100 threat reports at you and say, okay, these are the 100 threats that has impacted your network. We basically say, hey, these are the 4 intrusion attempts. We basically give you a complete correlation of events, and we'll tell you, okay, so this is how it is all correlated. This should be the mitigation strategy, right? So we don't give you any kind of blind visibility, but it's an in-depth visibility across the hops, basis which you can really go after a very, very strong defense mechanism. So that's basically, our 3 steps with respect to creating a zero trust network architecture for the data center workloads. Now, coming back to the Mitre attack framework, there's again important because we are talking about security here. And, so we are one of the guys, or probably one of the few guys, I would say, who basically tick mark on all of the tricks and techniques that Mitre clearly lists out, right? So that basically, just to give you a confidence that VMware is, is as strong any other security vendor in the market today. We're already one of the top 5 security vendor, and we aspire to be 1 or 2, like how we are there in the other products in a couple of years down the line. But yes, this platform, what we are speaking about, is clearly resonating with our customers. They really see a lot of value, and they see the benefits, not only in terms of security cost, but in terms of the operational agility as well. Now I want to basically, go on and on, but I thought I'll quickly also share with you some, the advantage with VMware ourselves achieved with how we did about the zero trust network security, right? So this is our own environment. And as you can see, we had about 500 plus hosts, and we ran about 100 plus applications. It is obviously much more, and our challenges are more or less similar to the industry challenges, so it was no difference, right? So we had our own critical applications that were all lying wide open east-west. The traditional firewalls were definitely creating the choke points, because more and more applications you have, more and more throughput you would require for the applications for communication. The only option was to increase the throughput of the perimeter firewall, and because you need to accommodate all the traffic. So it was definitely bottleneck for the organization. And isolating the VDI desktops was also not really practical, because that also required the hairpinning across the perimeter firewalls and things like that. And last but not the least, as you basically scale up, you really need to have dynamic policies, right? So if you do not have a dynamic policies, you are really talking about, stale policies that gets built over time, and that becomes even much more complex to manage. So what is the solution that VMware went ahead? So VMware went ahead and deployed a product, which is NSX firewall. So what they did is, first and foremost, NSX will provide them the complete visibility that they need end to end across the cloud, right? So which also helps them to discover the policies, because as I said, we are closer to the workloads, closer to the application. We can tell you what kind of policies you need to have a distributed firewall. So the discover policies and recommendations was part of the platform. So then we go about doing the micro segmentation, right? Which is about providing the firewall capabilities for all of the applications that you see here, right? And similar is what we did with the VDI environment also, right? With a single policy, we can protect our entire VDI environment. And last but not the least, as and when the new workloads gets added up in any of the environment, the platform will automatically scale and create the automatic policies, right? So it's not only about creating those automatic policies. As and when the application is moved from one location to another location, the policies will also move along with it. If you retire a particular VM, the policies will also get retired and terminated. So no stale policies, high security, less manual intervention. So these are some of the major benefits that we were able to achieve. Now, this is, all of you can read again. So this is about better security. So it's a complete, we were able to scale zero trust architecture. This prevented the lateral movement between the applications. We were able to be much more operationally agile. And the best part is we were able to also see a huge cost reduction. So typically when we want to deploy a zero trust architecture, it is basically a compromise that we make between the cost and the security, because you would obviously want to put a firewall to everything. But then even if you have all the money, it is sometimes much more complex to manage. And then even if you want to manage, the cost involved is really very high. So that's where we are talking about a solution which is like gives you the highest level of security, gives you the best agility that you would need as you scale your environment across a multi-cloud, and obviously giving you the best cost savings as well, right? So that's basically our own example of what we did from a network security, and zero trust architecture perspective. And so I just want to basically end up with, as I said, there are multiple unique points from a security perspective that we need to constantly monitor. But with VMware, of course, we can cover you with respect to what it is, right? Whether it is endpoint, identity, network, cloud, everything. So we basically can provide you an end-to-end zero trust with the different solutions that we can have, and make sure that irrespective of which areas that you would want to focus from a zero trust perspective, we can have you completely covered end-to-end. And more than happy to take any questions, or and we can go with the flow. So that's pretty much what I had to present today. I think I'm on time.
So thank you for those helpful insights and perspectives, Narayan. So maybe we can now go over to our participants in the roundtable, and maybe I can ask my first question to Joji. So Joji, from your perspective, since you come from the financial services industry, what are the top 3 cybersecurity threats that you are currently dealing with?
Yeah, we are into capital market. So as you all know, capital market demands the availability and performance much more than any other domains, right from the market hours to the settlement. The system should be available. And now, in the past a few months, because of the pandemic, we have extended the systems to the employees' devices. We have extended the systems to work from home. There are a lot of requirements which we never thought of before came up, and we had added more SaaS-based subscriptions. We had added more cloud-based applications. So the ecosystem has exponentially grown complicated. At the same time, the threats has also increased a lot. So if you ask me specifically for in the past few months, what was the challenge? It was this uncertainty or unexpected requirements which came up, and the volume of the changes. Change itself as a challenge. Change management itself as a challenge during these days, because most of the experts was working from home, and we had to open up many controls for smooth business functioning. And at the same time, the regulators also wanted us to ensure that we are not compromising on the security, because these days the cyber attacks also was at the highest level. I hope everyone read about the increase in the cyber attacks. So given all these turbulent conditions, it was very challenging during these past a few months specifically, and we are also moving from the perimeter level to the identity-based approach. So we have just moved, so it is not mature, and it is not a time-tested kind of environment. So these are the major issues we faced, and we are gradually stabilizing on this new work from home requirement and other business use cases. And as the presenter mentioned here, the business requirements, particularly the business requirement related to the micro architecture based business requirement, and the application based, when we go for a new application, it is not fitting into the legacy data center model. We'll have to be ready with the new platforms, which is also a challenge nowadays.
Thanks, Joji, for taking us through some of your challenges, and and the fact that you are going in for an identity-based system as the next step towards tackling some of these issues that you are having. So it's very useful for all of us to know this. And so maybe I'll go over to Sangameshwar and ask him. So Sangameshwar, we've heard Joji talk about some of the issues and the problems. So maybe can you share with us, how have you adapted your cybersecurity strategy to deal with the changing threat environment? So what are you doing now, or what is different?
Yeah. Thank you for the good presentation, Narayan, first of all. So a lot of insightful aspects. So now, as we are aware that over the past couple of years, the overall threat landscape has changed, because due to heavy digital transformation, work from anywhere, get to access to any of the information which was only present inside the organization earlier. So a lot of shift has happened. There is overall paradigm shift of the way the business models have been completely changed. Now, in my personal opinion, there are a lot of, it's not like single strategy would work. It should be a multi-pronged security strategy, where we need to look into see that how our incident response, which was traditionally governed, designed, and being tested, has to be transformed first initially. If any incident response occurs, with the changed circumstances, do we really, are adapting? Are we ready? Do we need to make sure that we need to map and make sure we test and be ready? And also, there was, VPNs were there for a while for the remote access, very limited percentage earlier, right? Now you see pretty much, unless and otherwise essential services, majority of them are remote, workers, right? Either it could be vendors, the complete supply chain, if you see, and individual organizations, right? Now, how are we going to have that remote access capabilities? Are we equipped to first? Obviously, everybody was, worried about how do we make sure everybody is able to connect, right? Now, after that, how do we make sure that we secure? We should have a definitive strategy around that. It's not just the employees, it's about the integration of the applications, different digital assets which are involved in the organization and the business, right? And I would say the vendor risk management has also evolved, considering the supply chain attacks in the recent times. So one of the very important strategies around how do we make sure that the risk management is considered not just the organization but the complete ecosystem of the business. It includes the obviously vendors and their vendors, etc., right? And the risk assessment, the way traditionally we used to do, and a lot of threat modeling was also involved, like Narayanan was mentioning about Mitre and all, considering the tactics and techniques. How do we make sure the applications or the services which we are offering as an organization, are we assessing them based on the current emerging threats? So our threat modeling should be encompassed and make sure it is in line to the existing threat landscape. And nonetheless, the last and very important aspect is about the persistent security awareness for remote workers, whoever, and make sure we need to make them aware that how one individual can remain vigilant on any social engineering threats, like however defense of depth or zero trust we have. The easiest, yes, zero trust will also look into once the access is there. So never trust, never do that. But still, majority of the access, if one can achieve the credentials, it's a bigger problem. So I would personally say these are the aspects which should include in this security strategy.
Thanks, Sangamesh, for talking about the various aspects of the security strategy. I think that was very helpful, considering that we learned from you because you are doing risk management. So I'd like to ask Yatish, we've heard Narayan talk about zero trust. So do you see any benefits of adopting a zero trust paradigm?
Yes, of course. I think we are a bank and we are an investment bank. We are a retail bank. For us, what becomes very important is, you asked a question to Joji earlier, what is your top threat? When we look at a bank and its operations, for us, the top three threats are: one is ransomware, second is data leakage, third is phishing, because, a lot of people would tend to get phished. And because more and more, as part of our digital transformation, we are exposing our digital banking channels to a wide variety of customers and clients outside, we are more and more vulnerable. So it's imperative that we look at a zero trust security model. It's imperative that we are able to have a good level of traceability and an audit about how the security mechanism works. As the paradigm goes, it used to be trust but verify earlier, but now it's the converse, right? We have to make sure that at every step, we have the real-time visibility that we get for the users accessing our systems, for users accessing our applications, which are extremely critical. And some of our applications that we have it facing the regulators, which means, we are bound by the regulations, and especially for us, it's the we have a lot of cybersecurity acts that we need to adhere to, which is in Europe, which is called the Europe Union Agency for Cybersecurity. It defines a lot of facts which we need to adhere to. And while we do all of that, we need to make sure our systems are geared for it, our processes are geared for it. Our data practices are geared for it, and our governance is geared for it. And hence it becomes very, very important and beneficial to apply the zero trust security model.
Thanks so much for that. Giving us a little bit of context about what you are doing as a bank, and why it's so imperative, and why you think it's essential to go for a zero trust kind of model. I just want to take a minute to introduce, Mr. Abhishek Basu, Principal Architect, Information Security with Bank Bazaar, and Mr. S. Srikanth, CISO, Tata Electronics, who have also joined us. So welcome, gentlemen, to this conversation. We are very happy to have you here. To continue further from what Yatish just said, it leads me to the next question. Narayanan also mentioned, that now we are in an environment where, we have multi-cloud, we have hybrid, we have things in the data center. So, and, we are also dealing with, newer compute models like hyper-converged devices. We have we have containers, you mentioned serverless. So how do you apply something like zero trust to this kind of a very, you can say, diverse environment? So maybe someone can share some thoughts. Maybe let me go to Mr. Hariharan and ask him his views on this. Hariharan, can you come in, please? We can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, Giridhar. So I was on mute. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Could you please repeat the question? Sorry.
I think the question was that we have talked about zero trust as the new kind of security paradigm.
Yeah.
But how do you apply zero trust to an environment where you have a multi-cloud environment? You are doing containers, you are doing serverless, you're doing hyper-converged compute model. You still have applications in the data data center. So do you think it's like practical or feasible to apply this kind of zero trust without impacting your performance or complexity?
Right. Okay. So we haven't gone to that level of the hybrid cloud kind of security security kind of enclosure or kind of a restriction. Our industry, our services predominantly towards IT services, and touching across the banks across the Middle East. So we are looking at. I mean, we didn't go for a multi-cloud kind of a model, but we were a little bit traditional, considering the expectations of our customers, and also for us scaling up into migrating our legacy systems, which are all predominantly in hosted on premises, and we are moving everything into SaaS. So that being said, yeah, so we are looking into the zero trust adoption, and we are in talks with Microsoft as well, and then looking at, okay, what are the possibilities, and we did have look at some of the options, or the kind of management's expectation is, okay, how will I try to tighten the vulnerabilities, and look at, okay, what will be the speed at which we respond back to the customer request, and be it RFPs or any kind of initiatives that we want to look at. So the kind of portfolio, the software portfolio that I currently manage, and try to move across into SaaS, and that kind of journey that we are in. So definitely I can answer this in terms of the benefits of moving into the zero trust adoption, and where we would see that, okay, the speed or the response back to the customers will, we want to look at around 20% increase, and then look at enhanced security, and then also kind of the data protection, that is pretty much critical for us, considering the, the banking environment. I would, I would appreciate the comments from Jijo and also from Yatish in terms of, they from the banking sector. Yeah, so that will be my response, Giridhar.
Thank you, Hariharan.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask Utkarsh, to come in. So Utkarsh, what are your views about, a zero trust, implementing a zero trust kind of environment in your organization? So are you doing something like this, or do you
have
any ideas around it?
Utkarsh here. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Utkarsh. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I won't say that we are already doing most of the things that are required for creating a zero trust environment. However, I would say that we are trying to, go there. So firstly, we are looking at the challenges. Some very typical challenges are like, for example, there is no compensatory control like a network perimeter in case the host-based security controls are failing. So, it has been put in different ways earlier that, a loss of the network perimeter when people are working from home. But, if you see it in reality, when you want to see how much protected you are, finally, then we don't see any compensatory controls. For example, if somebody is able to unload, some of the agents on their machines, so you will not be able to find out, or you would not be able to protect that machine against attacks. So that applies to machines as well as users. Second challenge, what I feel is, missing control over network security due to internet from home, which is more or less the same thing. But, for example, the endpoint device, the customer premises equipment that we have at home, that's not in control of our network administrators. So, you have a completely missing firewall and no IPS. Email monitoring is, if only you have a cloud-based service on email, only then it is protected. So there goes the data. And then, a lot of other missing controls. So now to implement zero trust, I feel that, firstly, we should have repeated periodic identification and authentication of the end users and the machines they're working on. So it might be, repeating prompting by, supplying 2FA or tokens, or, some other form of biometrics, or some automated form of identification that, it's the same user or same machine, or it may be even behavior analytics. So to be able to do that, we would have to invest more into more effort as well as computing into this to be able to do this all the time, probably even bandwidth. And also, we need to give extra computing and effort for data classification, as one of my friends said in between regarding data security. So data classification is one very important thing, and when your machines are not on the network, and you're just using a plain simple DLP, or then it becomes an issue. Because data is getting generated all the time, coming in from different channels, going out from other different channels, which might be authorized channels like emails. However, they're on your machine, and it depends on your role how sensitive the data should be there on your machine, which changes day to day. So this is one of the these two are one of the major things I would like to focus on, while going on the journey towards zero trust. One is periodic identification and authentication, and second is data classification.
Thanks, Utkarsh. I think you have made some very valuable points there about the implementation of zero trust, and what are the things we could focus on. And I think you have managed to highlight some of the challenges also in doing this. So I'll ask Narayanan and his colleague to come in as soon as we've got some more people, into the conversation, to respond to some of those the issues that you have raised. But I'd like to just ask Abhishek Basu. Hi, Abhishek. So I want to get your view. Abhishek, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I could see your speakers.
Okay.
So, I think, Utkarsh had talked about some of the, practical points about, implementing zero trust. So I want to get your view on, what are the really sort of operations and process issues, involved in zero trust.
Yep. So, hey team, this is Abhishek here. So I heard every one of you, and just summing up everything is what we do in Bank Bazaar. Bank Bazaar being one of the pioneers in the banking fintech industry. We see a lot of attacks coming from left and right from our neighboring countries and all our good friends all across the world. We see attacks, right? So for us, attacks and stopping attacks, reacting to those attacks is the first and foremost thing. Compliance is something which we take it as a secondary approach, because if you are secured, compliance will be there. You won't have to worry about compliance. So its prime thing is on security. So when Corona happened, right, a lot of tools, a lot of softwares and the business plans of the security softwares changed overnight. They became outdated, right? And like Corona was spreading, the term zero trust was also spreading in the security industry. Every vendor was telling we are zero trust, and these are the models of zero trust. But to be honest, we have applied zero trust, and it was a very tough journey in terms of applying zero trust, because finding a true zero trust was the main challenge. The principle of zero trust was not followed by much of the vendors. It's more on a VPN or a DLP or a IDS solution, but not a true zero trust solution. The challenges that I face, so we had a native data center, we were hybrid, we are now 100% cloud, right, and 100% container microservices. So when we talk about zero trust, now there are vendors, there are solutions which comes and sits very close to your application, right? That's the term that used. I mean, I think Narayan also used the same term. So when you say sit close to the application, now there are various thought process that goes in key. What is sitting close to the application? It can be sitting in the same VM, or it can be sitting in the same container, right? But that's kind of a challenge for any team. When it sits within a container, now what is a container? A container is a bare minimum operating system, or rather a process. I would consider it as a process, right? Which is running only things which is required for an application. For a Tomcat or an Nginx, only the Nginx things will be running. There will be no extra packages. And that's where the security of containers comes in, because you don't have any extra packages to be exploited or to be, breached into, right? You just have to focus on Nginx and their dependency packages. Now, when you say sitting close to the containers or sitting inside the containers as an agent, basically the problem arises that now I have to induce more packages to support that agent running within the container, right? And that can affect your security, that can affect your latency, that can affect your business CI/CD pipelines also. So these are the practical problems of zero trust. So yeah, two things I would say. All the products are good in the market, but it is very hard to find the true zero trust product. And implementing of zero trust is again a strategy. It's not something that we buy and we just deploy with the help of a vendor or your teammates deploy it. It's more of a strategy than a tool.
Thank you, Abhishek, for injecting a dose of reality into the conversation. I think your practical experiences in this space, of actually doing zero trust from bottom up, I think is very, very valuable. And I do hope that some of the people who are here today can connect with you later, to understand more about how to do this. I think it's important that as you mentioned, it's not you buy a product, bolt it on, and you get zero trust. It's not as simple as that. And I think your experiences and your knowledge will be very, very helpful to everyone. Give me a moment, please, Narayan. I just want to get Mr. Sarveshwar Rao also into the conversation. So, Mr. Rao, you've also been listening to everybody. So maybe if you would like to share something from your side on the, the security issues, or whether you are doing zero trust, it is useful.
Good evening, gentlemen. I think the session was deep diving into zero trust, and the word zero trust is very key, and it is catchy. And while the implementation part, it's a long way to understand the zero trust, how we can implement. So being the traditional way of implementing networks and other things in the on-premises, and suddenly we are expanding our perimeter to all work from home environment. It is yet to get a maturity of what is zero trust, and how that can be really benefit to the business. And I maybe like one of the implementation, like Abhishek was sharing, maybe it is good to know what is the implementation challenges and other things, and see, as everybody listed out all their new way of working, demand work from any device, anywhere. I think I don't want to repeat all those things. So majority is like the credential management and protection of that, and how we improve the awareness of the security to users. And these the first challenges we are planning, and most probably we need more understanding of the zero trust benefits, and upon that maybe the implementation has to be convinced. That's my take on that.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. I think some interesting perspectives from somebody who would like to understand more about this new paradigm, zero trust, and how it can be. I think there's a great deal of interest, but perhaps some little bit of reservation about how exactly to go about it. I just want to get Mr. Shrikant from Tata Electronics to share his perspectives on the state of cybersecurity and where zero trust could play a role. Mr. Shrikant, please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, it is really, it is booming. I can say majorly there are major mutations happening with malware, and what people have said is APT and the insider attacks. More on that, and the cloud is improving. There are a lot of cloud services happening. If you see in manufacturing, there are AI, ML kind of work going on. So major impact like automations and AI. There are a lot of advanced attacks happening. We found recently a lot of attacks happened with that. So that make data the risk and vulnerabilities across the network. Also, it's a risk over there. So we follow the best practices on kind of NIST framework, which we protect based on that identity, protect, detect, protect, all kind of things. We majorly safeguard that kind of things, but still there are risks around the application side. What people have said that kind of attacks happening between in between the application area as well as the other networking areas. And the major things which we have to look at it in that case is how your SOAR technology or SOC in that case, how you're monitoring all these things, zero kind trust in that case. So where is the poor intelligence quality and lack of integrations between the source and the aggregations? We have to look at it that way. So preventing the insider attack also is one of the major role where we have to go with the inside threat visibility as well as behavioral of anomalies, attacks happening inside the plant or inside the organization. Yeah. So those areas has to be mainly focused on. And if I take it zero trust, in that case, nowadays the digital transformation is happening over across hybrid areas and workflows, and how the architecture to be mainly look at it, how you reduce the security complexity and operational overheads in that case, and how you are majorly looking at the visibility and the assets identification, clear identification of assets, critical assets, and protecting against these policies, this zero trust thing. Majorly, I have to look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Srikanth. I think you brought a valuable perspective from the manufacturing industry to this discussion. Particularly you talk about a little bit about OT and the asset identification across multiple locations and multiple kinds of assets as well, particularly in the manufacturing industry. So I know Narayan is waiting to interject a word in, and I think we've got a lot of interesting perspectives. So Narayan and I hand it back to you for some quick comments before I bring in Mohan Kannan to summarize the.
I just wanted to basically concur, and I think Giridhar, you also mentioned that's the reality, right? So every vendor, zero trust is certainly one of like a multi-cloud or cloud. That's the next most abusive word in the industry, and everybody claims to be doing a lot of things around zero trust. But I think, I would really just want to reiterate, I'd concur with everything that, most of our panelists and the other members also said here. It is definitely a journey, right? It's a journey where we need to see what are our areas of priority, and so it's a journey that involves multiple security points, covering the endpoints, workloads, the cloud, the identity of the users and the networks all put together, right? So it is definitely a journey. So, it's depending on our use cases, depending on what our priorities are, we need to take on the journey, and it's an evolving transformation that you will have to go after. So definitely agree with, what some of the members have said. Just wanted to, end up there. Yep.
Thank you, Narayanan. So, over to now Mohan Kannan. He's pre-sales head from DigitalTrack, and I'll ask him to summarize today's discussion. So to introduce Mohan, he has 15 plus years of experience in IT infrastructure solutions and more than 10 years in developing VMware solutions to clients. So over to you, Mohan.
Thank you, Giridhar. And first of all, thanks to everyone to join this roundtable conference, and it should be very insightful, which we get the comments and their perspectives of how they are looking at as a zero trust approach, right? In this of a new journey of our IT industries, right? The workloads and everything which would be, right? So I quickly summarize this. As Narayanan said, right, in the initial of how the zero trust should be approached and how VMware has approached the zero trust things, right? VMware has majorly focused as a 5-pillar, which Narayanan showcased there, right? As a device, as a user, as a cloud environment, or my infra environment, and the network, as well as the security. So all this 5 is a major things which we covered as to secure our network as a zero trust, right? So this also, as Abhishek and Utresh says that the challenges of implementations, yes, this zero trust is not a single concept which I do it in a day night, or today I buy a product, I implement it, tomorrow it's started to work. It is not like as a day one started work process, right? It would be a process which I need to implement, right? So and in the side by way, right, the security awareness which I need to create to the user also, right? By implementing this zero trust, so obviously the end user also will comes to know what's happening in my network or applications which I able to access, all these things, right? So that would be a thing which we need to make into this concept, right? So zero trust is mainly because of framing this zero trust for a long-term perspective of implementing, while achieving this for a couple of time which we spend and we'll understand and we'll achieve, right? So as Sangam sir and Sejus are saying, talk about the compliance orient also, right? Which would be on the industries when my perimeter has been beyond, right? My complaints also will be started to break over there, or I need to invest more time to compile that with my complaints, which I have already to achieve that, right? The maintaining of my complaints also should be one point which we always need to be look into this kind of a situation like a pandemic or this areas which remote worker users, all these things which we need to be addressed, right? So definitely this zero trust will help us to do that, right? But we need to spend some time to implement it, and we need to prioritize which I want to go first, right? Either I want to focus on the user side, or I need to focus on the end user, devices side, or I need to focus on the network side, which would be the area which I need to focus, right? Because a small vulnerable which casts a big impact on the production, right? So we heard a lot of stories which comes on the our news, or our experience, right, which we have connected with the multiple customers. We heard that a small vulnerable which caused the major impact on their business for a couple of days or a couple of months, it should be again to regain that, it would be again a difficult. So as come out for all these things like zero trust, which would be be a right approach what we need to start at least. From now on, which will be started to focus on that. So in the network part, as in a network, while we talk about the network, right? So we normally focused on the north-south traffic, and we always think about that, right? So, but the east-west traffic is more important, because if any one which should be got compromise, it will not affect my other production also, right? So those things which would be things we need to consider and on the zero trust approach, right? So that is the what my thought. Summarize this with the roundtable conference. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for the giving opportunity and discuss about. We'll get a lot of insights from the user perspectives and organization perspectives or industries perspectives, that how they varied or how their data is to be important and all these things. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Giridhar.
Thank you, Mohan, for quickly summarizing some of the key points. And so with that, I know we have run a bit over time. I know people have to join other meetings, but my thanks to each one of you for your thoughts, views, and opinions. It has really helped us get some new insights on how to approach the implementation of zero trust model of security. I think we all learned some new things from the people around the table. So thanks once again on behalf of CIO&Leader VMware and DigitalTrack for this very enriching session. And we do look forward to being in touch and connecting with you once again to take this topic forward. So, but for today, we bring the session to a close. So thank you so much and goodbye.
Thank you so much, everybody. It was a great discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.